It's 2 in the morning and you're wide awake. Before I explain any of this, do one thing with me. Right now, stop thinking about the thing that's keeping you up. Actually, try. I'll wait. It came back, didn't it? Here's what just happened, and it's stranger than it feels. The thing you reached for to push that thought away was another thought. You tried to think your way out of thinking, and it didn't work. Not because you're weak, and not because you're broken. It didn't work because you're running a system that was built on purpose without an off switch. Push a thought down, and the research keeps landing in the same place. It comes back. Fighting the loop is part of what feeds it. So the real question was never, how do I stop? It's stranger than that. Why would a mind built to keep you alive learn to turn its sharpest tool against you and leave you no way to shut it off? There are 3 reasons, and each one is stranger than the last. First, let me tell you what you're actually feeling, because you've probably had it backwards. When you lie there running the same conversation for the 40th time, it doesn't feel like spinning, it feels like working. Like if you just make one more pass, you'll finally crack it. There's even a name for that belief: the quiet conviction that enough thinking will get you the answer. But that belief is a prediction your brain keeps making, and it almost never comes true. Because your mind isn't solving the problem. It's circling it. And the feeling of progress is real. It's chemically real, even when no answer ever arrives. So if you've ever felt trapped inside your own head, rehearsing something useless and unable to stop, the research sees you, and it's blunt about it. This isn't a flaw in you. It's a system running exactly the way it was built. Now, why? 3 locks on this door. The first is the hardware, a network in your brain that was supposed to go quiet the moment you focus and doesn't. The second is the chemistry, a reward system that was meant to help you solve problems and instead learn to pay you just for turning them over. And the third goes back further than you'd think, to a version of you that learned a long time ago that staying alert was the safest thing it could do. But here's the part nobody could even test until last year. Because in 2025, someone finally checked whether the first lock is even real. Hold on to that. Start with the obvious guess. You'd think an overthinking brain is a brain working too hard. It's not. It's a brain that won't turn one specific system off. Inside your head, there's a set of regions scientists call the default mode network. It's a big part of your sense of who you are. It replays your memories, runs little simulations of the future, and produces the voice you hear when everything else goes quiet. It's the narrator. It's a huge part of what makes you feel like one continuous you. And in most people, that narrator is supposed to go quiet the second you lock on to the outside world. You start a task, you engage with something real, and the background chatter dies down. In people who overthink, it doesn't. The network stays on. It keeps generating, even during tasks, even in the moments that should pull you out of your head. It's the tab your mind never closes. And you can feel it. Not the tired that comes from doing too much. The other one. The tired that comes from a mind that never quite powered down. Now, how much do we actually know here? This part's worth being honest about. The strongest version of this comes from depression research. In people who are depressed, that background network doesn't just stay louder during tasks. It wires more tightly to a small, mood-related region deep in the brain. The tighter that link, the more the person loops. It's one of the most reliably repeated findings in the whole field. But, and this matters, for everyday overthinkers, people who aren't clinically depressed, the picture is real but blurrier. Researchers haven't been able to pin it down nearly as cleanly. The brain fingerprint that seemed so obvious turned out to be shakier than anyone expected. And then came 2025. A team of researchers decided to test the leading brain signature of overthinking, that default mode network pattern that was supposed to explain everything. They tested it in 443 young people across 5 separate studies. This was not a pilot, and it did not hold up. The tidy fingerprint, the one that was supposed to predict who ruminates and who doesn't, didn't predict it cleanly. not across the board, not the way the earlier science had suggested. Now, be careful what you take from that. It does not mean overthinking isn't in your brain. Of course it is. In adults, that network really is tangled up with rumination. What it means is narrower and stranger. Science has not been able to shrink overthinking down to one dependable signal, one picture on a scan you could point at and say, there, that's the glitch. And this test was in young people, checking whether the adult story even carries over. It didn't. Not cleanly. Sit with that for a second, because it's the most quietly astonishing thing in this whole story. There is no single spot in your head where overthinking lives. It isn't one broken part. It's the whole instrument, hardware, chemistry, history, playing at once. You can't pull one wire and say, this is it, which makes the second lock matter even more. Because if the hardware is complicated, the chemistry is ruthlessly simple. So here's the second thing you've probably had backwards. You'd assume the loop keeps running because some part of you thinks it's working. It's the opposite. The loop keeps running because your brain is paying you to keep it running. When you work on a problem, your brain releases dopamine. But most people get dopamine wrong. It isn't the reward chemical. Not exactly. It's the chemical of seeking, of wanting, of the chase. It tracks the pursuit far more than the payoff. And this is the part that should stop you cold. Your brain will release dopamine just for the promise of information, even when that information changes nothing at all. The act of chasing an answer, turning a problem over, building the argument in your head, that gets rewarded. Not the resolution, the chase. So go back to 2 a.m., running that scenario for the 40th time. Part of your brain is quietly telling you, this is worth doing. Keep going. This matters. It's misleading you, but it's misleading you chemically. And that is very hard to override with logic. One honest note, because it matters. The cleanest version of this science comes from animals chasing real rewards. So treat the 2 a.m. version as the best model we have, not a closed case. Still, it's the engine under the illusion. Your brain really is rewarding the loop, not because the loop is working, but because your brain genuinely can't tell the difference between solving a problem and rehearsing one. And there's one more piece. Your brain hates an open loop. An unfinished thought just sits there, humming, quietly asking to be closed. And a worry is an open loop that never closes. So you keep going back, trying to shut a door that has no latch, which is exactly why just stop thinking about it backfires. Try to suppress a thought. Stop. Just stop. And it tends to come back more often afterward. Researchers call it the rebound effect. The push to get rid of it is part of what keeps bringing it back. So this was never a willpower problem. You're wrestling a system that was never built to be fought head on. So the hardware won't quiet, and the chemistry rewards the chase. But that leaves the strangest question of all. Why would a brain want to be like this? Because once, it kept you alive. Scanning for danger is one of the smartest things a nervous system ever learned to do. The ancestors who anticipated threats, who modeled what might go wrong, who thought ahead, they survived. The ones who didn't often didn't. Vigilance isn't a design flaw. It's one of the oldest survival tools we have. But for some people, the pattern has a closer, more specific origin. And this is a gentle term, so I want to be careful with it. Researchers who study early life keep finding the same thing. Growing up around unpredictability, in a home where the emotional weather could turn without warning, is linked to a mind that stays a little more on guard years later, sometimes decades later. You can almost picture it. A kid who learns to read a room before they've even got their coat off, to catch the shift in a parent's voice half a second early, to always keep a quiet plan ready for the version where things go wrong. That brain learned vigilance because vigilance was rational. In that world, anticipating what might go wrong was protection. Now, this is one pathway, not a diagnosis, and not everyone. But for some overthinkers, the watching started as safety. And then, for a lot of people, the world changed. The danger passed. But nobody told the brain. The system kept running. The network stayed online. The dopamine kept rewarding the loop. And the watching that once kept you safe became the thing that keeps you up at 2 in the morning. Now, here's something the research does not say, and you should hear it clearly because it's the comfortable story everyone reaches for. There's an idea floating around that all this replaying makes you sharper about people, that overthinkers are secretly more emotionally intelligent, that all this mental work must be good for something. The research doesn't really back that up. If anything, heavy overthinking makes you more confident about what other people are feeling, not more accurate. Your mind generates a plausible read of the room. It feels true. But confidence and accuracy aren't the same thing, and the gap between them is where a lot of the suffering lives. There is a distinction that matters, though. Susan Nolan Hoeksema, who spent her career on this, found two different patterns: reflection, turning inward to genuinely understand something, and brooding, a passive, distressing loop that goes nowhere. The trouble is how easily one slides into the other. A moment of real reflection can tip into a spiral, almost invisibly, and the person doing it usually can't feel the exact moment it crossed. So what actually helps? Not what you'd expect. The therapists who work with chronic overthinkers don't try to stop the thoughts. They change your relationship to them, noticing the loop without climbing inside it, watching the thought arrive. There it is again, the same rehearsal, without becoming it. It works precisely because it doesn't fight the system. It just puts an inch of distance between you and the thought. And an inch, it turns out, is enough to stand on. So, overthinking isn't a single broken part you can find on a scan. The 2025 research made that clear. It's the whole instrument, playing at once. The network that won't power down, the chemistry that rewards the chase, and the vigilance that was once survival and is now just noise. Which means three things are true at the very same time. That network won't go quiet because it was built to run so much of your inner world, and it's extraordinarily good at its job. The loop feels necessary because your brain honestly can't tell solving a problem from rehearsing one, and the watchfulness underneath all of it was, once, the smartest thing you ever did. Here's the part I keep coming back to. Your mind cannot think its way out of every problem. Some things can't be solved by thinking harder. They have to be felt, or decided, or simply set down. The voice that won't go quiet isn't you. It's a lesson your brain learned a long time ago, back when the watching kept you safe. And a lesson can be unlearned, slowly, gently, until one night at 2 in the morning, the loop opens like it always does, and this time, you just let it close. We sit with one quiet human mystery at a time over here. If that's your kind of strange, oddly human, come back the next time you can't sleep.